Lonely human saves alien girl from hunters. The next day, her tribe's fiercest warrior arrives. The bitter wind howled across the frozen plateau, carrying tiny ice crystals that stung like needles against exposed skin. Thomas Morgan pulled his thermal jacket tighter around his broad shoulders and squinted through the gathering dusk. 50 years of hard living had etched deep lines into his weathered face, but hadn't diminished the alertness in his gray eyes or the strength in his still muscular frame. His isolated outpost, little more than a reinforced metal shelter perched on this desolate alien world's northern frontier, stood as the only sign of human presence for 100 miles. Just how he liked it. After 25 years in Galactic Fleet Special Operations and another 5 as a military advisor, Thomas had earned his solitude. The first flakes of snow began to fall as he finished securing the solar collectors. Winter on Glacius 9 was no joke. 3 months of near-constant darkness and temperatures that could freeze exposed flesh in minutes. He'd prepared meticulously, as always. Supplies stocked, generators checked, weapons cleaned. Another season, another survival challenge, he muttered to himself, his breath forming clouds in the frigid air. The crack of a distant energy weapon shattered the silence. Thomas froze, his hand automatically reaching for the pulse pistol at his hip. 5 years on this god-forsaken rock, and he had never heard weapons fire. The indigenous humanoid tribes, the blue-skinned Galatians, were primitive but peaceful, keeping mostly to themselves in the valleys below. Another shot rang out, closer this time, followed by a high-pitched cry that was unmistakably one of pain. "Damn it!" Thomas growled. Whatever was happening wasn't his problem. He'd left behind the hero business long ago, buried it alongside too many comrades and too many regrets. A third shot decided for him. Cursing under his breath, he ducked inside his shelter, emerging moments later with his custom-built rifle and tactical goggles. The weapon hummed softly as he activated its power cell. He moved with practiced efficiency across the rocky terrain, following the sounds of pursuit that carried on the wind. As he crested a small rise, he spotted them in the valley below. 2 figures in black armor chasing a smaller one who stumbled through the snow, clearly injured. Thomas dropped to a prone position and raised his rifle, the thermal scope revealing details his naked eye couldn't see. The pursuers weren't Galatians. Their armor was too advanced, their movements too precise. Hunters, then. Probably mercenaries. The fleeing figure stumbled and fell. Even from this distance, Thomas could see the flash of white hair and the blue skin that marked her as a Galatian. Young from her size, barely more than a girl. One of the hunters raised his weapon. Thomas exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against his shoulder, its energy bolt striking the hunter's weapon with pinpoint accuracy, sending it flying from his grasp. "Not today, asshole," Thomas muttered, chambering another round. The hunter spun, scanning for the source of the attack. Thomas fired again, the bolt striking the ground at their feet, kicking up snow and stone. The message was clear: leave or die. For a tense moment, the hunters conferred, their body language agitated. Then, to Thomas's relief, they retreated, disappearing into the gathering storm. Thomas waited until they were well out of sight before approaching the fallen Galatian. She cowered as he drew near, her large, expressive eyes, a luminous silver blue, wide with fear. "Easy," he said, keeping his voice gentle despite its natural gruffness. "I'm not going to hurt you." She didn't understand his words, but something in his tone or manner must have reassured her. She allowed him to examine her wound, a nasty energy burn across her shoulder. "Those bastards," Thomas growled. "Come on, little one." "Storm's getting worse. We need shelter." With careful movements, he helped her to her feet. When she stumbled, he lifted her into his arms, surprised at how little she weighed despite being nearly 5 feet tall. Her skin was cool to the touch, her breathing rapid. By the time they reached his shelter, the storm had intensified into a full-blown blizzard. Thomas settled the girl on his cot and set about treating her wound with practiced efficiency, cleaning it with antiseptic and applying a regenerative bandage from his well-stocked medical kit. "You're lucky," he told her as he worked, knowing she couldn't understand but finding comfort in the sound of a human voice after so long alone. "Another few minutes out there." The girl watched him with those luminous eyes, wary but no longer terrified. When he offered her a bowl of hot soup, She accepted it with trembling hands, her movements graceful despite her injury. As she ate, Thomas studied her. The Glacians were humanoid, but distinctly alien, blue skin that ranged from pale azure to deep cobalt, white hair, slightly elongated limbs, and those remarkable eyes. This one was young, perhaps equivalent to a human teenager, with delicate features and an almost ethereal quality. What were those hunters after you for? He wondered aloud. And where's your tribe? The girl couldn't answer, of course. After eating, exhaustion overtook her, and she curled up on his cot, watching him with half-lidded eyes until sleep claimed her. Thomas settled into his chair, rifle across his lap, and prepared for a long night. Tomorrow would bring complications. The girl's people would be looking for her, and those hunters might return with reinforcements. But for tonight, in this small shelter, while the storm raged outside, he had done something he hadn't done in years. He had helped someone. Thomas woke with a start, his hand automatically reaching for his weapon. Years of military training had conditioned him to sleep lightly, one ear always alert for danger. Something had changed in the small shelter's atmosphere. The Galatian girl still slept on his cot, her breathing steady, her injured shoulder properly bandaged. Dawn's pale light filtered through the shelter's single reinforced window, revealing the storm had passed, leaving behind a pristine blanket of snow that sparkled under the alien world's rising sun. Then he saw her. Filling the doorway was a figure that momentarily stole his breath. A female Galatian warrior stood silhouetted against the morning light, her posture radiating controlled power. She was tall, nearly matching his 6'2" frame, with the characteristic blue skin of her species, though hers was a deeper, richer shade that reminded Thomas of Earth's twilight oceans. Intricate tribal markings adorned her exposed arms and face, telling stories he couldn't read but instinctively respected. Unlike the girl's simple clothing, this woman wore battle garments of dense, dark fabric reinforced with what appeared to be bone or metal plates across vital areas. A curved blade hung at her hip, and a spear-like weapon was gripped in her right hand, its tip gleaming with an unnatural blue light. But it was her eyes that truly captured him. Fierce, intelligent, and burning with barely contained fury. "You will explain," she said in surprisingly good English, her voice deep and melodic despite the hard edge of command. "Now." Thomas slowly raised his hands, showing they were empty. "The girl was being hunted. I intervened, brought her here for medical attention." He nodded toward the sleeping form. "She's injured but stable." The warrior's eyes narrowed, assessing him with cold calculation. "You are human." "Last time I checked," Thomas replied, allowing a hint of dry humor to enter his voice. "Humans do not help without purpose." She took a step forward, her weapon still ready. "What is yours, human?" "Thomas," he corrected. "My name is Thomas Morgan." "I did not ask for your name." "Well, I gave it anyway." "And you are?" A flicker of surprise crossed her features as though she hadn't expected this line of questioning. "Kira, first spear of the Northern Ice Clan." Her eyes darted to the sleeping girl. "And guardian Tamila, daughter of our chief." Thomas whistled low. "Chief's daughter?" No wonder those hunters were after her. Kira's posture stiffened further. "What do you know of the hunters?" "Not much. 2 of them, advanced tech. Definitely not local." Thomas gestured toward his rifle. "I convinced them to reconsider their life choices." A ghost of something, respect perhaps, flickered across Kira's face before vanishing behind her warrior's mask. "Show me," she demanded. Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Show you what?" "How you fought them. Humans are weak, soft." Her eyes traveled over his form with unconcealed skepticism, though Thomas didn't miss the lingering nature of her gaze on his broad shoulders and strong hands. "Yet you claim to have defeated 2 Rekian hunters." "I didn't say I fought them hand-to-hand," Thomas replied, a smile tugging at his lips despite the tension. "I'm more of a shoot them from a distance kind of guy these days." "Cowardly," she assessed, but without the venom he might have expected. "Effective," he countered. Their eyes locked, and something electric passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their differences. Both warriors, both protectors, both alone in their own ways. The moment shattered when the girl, Mila, stirred on the cot, her eyes fluttering open. She gasped when she saw Kira, words tumbling out in their native language. Kira responded, her tone softening slightly as she spoke to the younger Glacian. Thomas watched the exchange, fascinated by the transformation. The fierce warrior had layers beneath her hard exterior. "She says you were kind," Kira finally said, turning back to Thomas, "that you treated her wound and gave her food." "Basic human decency," Thomas shrugged. "Not all humans possess this decency." There was history in her words, Thomas realized. Bad history with his kind. "Fair enough," he conceded. "Not all Glacians are as quick to judge either, I'd wager." A flash of something, amusement, crossed Kira's face. "You speak boldly for one at spear point." "Old habit," Thomas replied, allowing himself a small smile. "Hard to break." Kira studied him for another long moment before slowly lowering her weapon. Not sheathing it, Thomas noted, but no longer pointing it at his vital organs. Progress. "The hunters will return," she said, "with more numbers." "Probably," Thomas agreed. "Any idea why they're after the chief's daughter?" Kira's jaw tightened. "Our people possess something the Vrekians desire, something they would destroy us to obtain. And what might that be?" "That is not your concern, human." "It became my concern when I shot at those hunters," Thomas pointed out. "And it's Thomas, not human." Their eyes met again, challenge and assessment passing between them. Thomas found himself strangely drawn to this fierce woman, her strength, her devotion to her charge, even her stubborn pride. It had been a very long time since he'd felt such immediate attraction to anyone. To his surprise, Kira's lips curved into the barest hint of a smile. "You are not what I expected, Thomas Morgan." "I get that a lot," he replied, feeling an answering smile form on his own lips. Outside, the sun climbed higher over the frozen landscape, casting long shadows across the pristine snow. Within the small shelter, something unexpected had begun to thaw. "Your shelter is compromised," Kira announced after a brief consultation with Mila. "The Vrekians know this location. We must return to my tribe." Thomas nodded, already mentally cataloging what supplies they would need. "And how far?" 2 days' journey through the northern pass. Kira's eyes narrowed. "If the girl can travel..." "I can fashion a sled," Thomas offered, moving to gather his essential gear. "But we'll need to move quickly. Those hunters won't stay away for long." Mila spoke rapidly in her native tongue, gesturing toward Thomas. Kira's expression softened marginally as she replied. "She says you saved her life," Kira translated. "She believes you are blessed by our ancestors." A hint of skepticism colored her tone. Thomas suppressed a smile. "Tell her I'm just a cranky old human who doesn't like bullies." When Kira translated, Mila's musical laughter filled the small shelter, transforming her from frightened girl to vibrant young woman. Even Kira's stern expression cracked slightly. Within an hour, they were ready. Thomas had constructed a makeshift sled from composite materials, loaded with survival essentials and his weapons. Mila, bundled in thermal gear Thomas had modified to fit her slender frame, rested atop the supplies. "No, you're prepared," Kira observed, watching him secure the last of his equipment. 25 years in special operations teaches you to expect the worst," Thomas replied, shouldering his rifle, "especially on frontier worlds." Kira's gaze lingered on him with new interest. "You were a warrior among your people." "Something like that. Yet now you live alone, far from human settlements." Thomas met her eyes. "Some battles leave marks you can't see." Understanding flickered in Kira's expression, the recognition of a kindred spirit that transcended their different species. For a moment, the warrior facade dropped, revealing something softer beneath. "My people have a saying," she said quietly. "The strongest blades are forged in the hottest fires. Ray, on Earth, we say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger," Thomas replied with a wry smile, "though sometimes it just makes you tired." The corner of Kira's mouth twitched upward. Perhaps humans and Glacians are not so different. They set out under the pale morning sun, Thomas pulling the sled while Kira scouted ahead, her movements fluid and precise despite the difficult terrain. The frozen landscape stretched before them, beautiful in its stark simplicity, endless fields of white, broken only by jagged rock formations and the occasional stand of crystalline vegetation. As they traveled, Thomas observed Kira with growing admiration. Her strength was evident not just in her physical prowess, but in the way she constantly checked on Mela, in how she read the terrain with expert eyes and the quiet authority she projected without effort. By midday, they had covered significant ground. During a brief rest, Kira shared dried meat from her provisions, a spicy, complex flavor, unlike anything Thomas had tasted before. "This is excellent," he said, savoring the unfamiliar taste. "Frost cat," Kira explained. "I hunted it myself during the last full moon." "Impressive. Those things are vicious." Kira's eyes widened slightly. "You have encountered them?" "One tried to make me its dinner last winter," Thomas said, pulling down his collar to reveal 3 parallel scars across his collarbone. "I convinced it otherwise." Kira leaned closer to examine the scars, her breath warm against his skin. "You survived a frost cat attack alone?" There was unmistakable respect in her voice now. "Like I said, I don't like bullies, even the 4-legged kind." Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither spoke. Thomas became acutely aware of her proximity, of the subtle scent that reminded him of winter pines and something uniquely alien, yet enticing. Mila's voice broke the moment. She pointed toward the horizon, speaking rapidly. "Storm clouds," Kira translated, reluctantly pulling back. "We must find shelter before nightfall." They pressed on, the wind gradually strengthening as dark clouds gathered. By late afternoon, fat snowflakes began to fall, reducing visibility. "There," Kira pointed toward a dark opening in a nearby cliff face. "An ice cave. We can shelter there." The cave proved deeper than it appeared from outside, extending back into the cliff. Ancient glacian symbols were carved into the smooth walls, glowing faintly with bioluminescent lichen. "This is a sacred place," Kira explained as they settled Mila in a protected alcove, "a waypoint for our hunting parties since before recorded history." Thomas nodded respectfully, setting up a small heating unit that cast a warm glow throughout the chamber. The contrast between the howling storm outside and the eerily beautiful sanctuary within was striking. As night fell and Mila drifted to sleep, Thomas and Kira sat near the heater, the soft light playing across their features. In the intimate confines of the cave, the tension between them had evolved into something different, an awareness charged with possibility. "Your technology," Kira gestured to the heater, "it is impressive." "Says the woman who can track game across a frozen wasteland and fight off predators with a spear," Thomas countered. "Our ways are ancient, tested by time," she replied, "but I am not blind to the advantages your people possess." "Different paths, same destination, survival." Thomas offered her a flask of his prized whiskey. "Two different paths." Kira accepted the flask cautiously, sniffing its contents before taking a small sip. Her eyes widened as the liquid burned down her throat. "By the ancestors," she gasped, "what manner of fire is this?" Thomas laughed, a genuine sound that surprised even himself. "An ancient human tradition. We call it whiskey." "It burns pleasantly," Kira admitted, taking another small sip before passing it back. Their fingers brushed, lingering longer than necessary. In the silence that followed, something shifted between them. Barriers lowering, possibilities opening. Thomas found himself drawn to her in a way he hadn't experienced in years, perhaps ever. There was something compelling about her strength, her fierce protectiveness, her unexpected moments of vulnerability, and in her eyes he saw his interest mirrored back at him, transcending the differences in their species, their cultures, their worlds. Outside, the storm raged on, isolating them in their temporary sanctuary, while inside a different kind of storm was brewing, one equally powerful but infinitely more welcome. Dawn broke with deceptive serenity, pale light filtering through the cave entrance, where the storm had deposited a fresh blanket of snow. Thomas woke first, momentarily disoriented until his eyes found Kira sleeping nearby, one hand still resting on her weapon. Even in slumber, she maintained the vigilant posture of a lifelong warrior. He allowed himself a moment to study her. The strong lines of her face softened slightly in sleep, and the rise and fall of her chest, the intricate markings visible on her exposed skin. There was something undeniably captivating about her, something that transcended the obvious physical differences between their species. Kira's eyes snapped open, instantly alert. "You watch me," she stated, neither accusation nor invitation in her tone. "Professional habit," Thomas replied with a small smile. "Assessing the tactical situation." "And your assessment?" A hint of playfulness had entered her voice, surprising him. Before he could respond, Mila stirred in her alcove, saving him from having to formulate an answer that wouldn't reveal too much of his growing attraction. Thomas moved to the cave entrance while Kira tended to Mila. The storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape, pristine, beautiful, and treacherously deep with fresh snow. As he scanned the horizon, something caught his eye, a glint of metal where no metal should be. Frowning, he retrieved his rifle and attached the scope, focusing on the anomaly. His breath caught. Embedded in the ice cliff about 30 meters away was a small device, its design unmistakably Rekian. "Kira," he called softly, "we have company." She joined him, her body heat radiating against his side as she followed his gaze. "What is it?" "Tracking device, military grade." Thomas adjusted the scope. "And it's not the only one." Now that he knew what to look for, he could spot several more devices strategically placed around the area, all pointing toward the cave. "They're mapping our position," he explained grimly. "This isn't just two hunters anymore. This is a coordinated operation." Kira's expression hardened. "How many?" "Can't tell from the trackers alone, but based on the deployment pattern." Thomas calculated quickly. "At least a dozen, maybe more." We must move quickly," Kira said, her voice tight with urgency. "If they find Mila, what do they want with her?" Thomas asked, turning to face Kira fully. "This is more than a random hunt. Tell me what we're really dealing with." Kira hesitated, internal conflict visible in her eyes. Finally, she nodded toward the interior of the cave. "Come, I will show you." She led him deeper into the cave, past the alcove where Mila rested, to a section where the ancient carvings grew more elaborate. In the center of one wall was a depiction of what appeared to be a stylized crystal formation. "The heart of winter," Kira explained, her voice dropping to a reverent tone. "An energy source that has sustained my people for millennia. It lies beneath our sacred temple, guarded by our strongest warriors and most powerful shamans." Thomas studied the carving, and the Rekians want it. "They discovered its existence 3 cycles ago," Kira confirmed. "Their scientists believe it could be weaponized, its energy harnessed for destruction rather than life." "And Mila?" "She is more than the chief's daughter. She is vessel in waiting, chosen to become the next guardian of the heart." Kira's fingers traced the carving with surprising tenderness. "The Rekians believe that by capturing her, they can force our tribe to surrender the heart." Thomas processed this information, pieces falling into place. "So, when I intervened, you disrupted a carefully planned abduction," Kira finished, "and likely made yourself a target as well." Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. The stakes had just risen dramatically. "We need to move," Thomas said, already mentally revising their route. "But first, I'm going to leave our friends a little surprise." While Kira prepared Mila for travel, Thomas ventured out to retrieve the nearest tracking device. With practiced hands, he modified it using components from his own equipment, transforming the passive tracker into an active decoy that would broadcast false movement patterns. "Clever," Kira commented, watching him work. "You've done this before." "Once or twice," Thomas admitted, remembering operations from years past, though usually with better equipment. "Your adaptability is impressive," she said, and there was something in her tone that made him look up. Her eyes held appreciation that went beyond mere tactical approval. "One of humanity's better traits," he replied with a half smile. "We make do with what we have." "Is that why you live alone in the wilderness?" "Making do?" The question caught him off guard with its perceptiveness. "Partly," he acknowledged. "After enough battles, sometimes silence is the only company you can stand." Kira nodded slowly. "Among my people, our greatest warriors often choose solitude in their later years. It is considered honorable, the final battle with one's own memories." Sounds like your people understand some things better than mine, Thomas said softly. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, an unspoken connection deepening between them. In that moment, the differences in their species seemed insignificant compared to the kindred nature of their spirits. The moment broke when Mila approached, looking stronger than the previous day but still moving gingerly. She spoke to Kira, who translated. She asks if you will carry her blade for her until she is strong enough. Kira indicated the small ceremonial knife at Mila's waist. It is a great honor among our people. Thomas accepted the ornate blade with appropriate solemnity, securing it alongside his own weapons. Tell her I'll return it when we reach safety. They set out under the morning sun, taking a different route than originally planned, one that would hopefully throw off their pursuers. Thomas deployed his decoys at strategic intervals, creating a false trail leading away from their actual path. As they traveled, Thomas noticed Kira watching him with increasing interest, her gaze lingering when she thought he wasn't aware. For his part, he found himself equally drawn to her, admiring her strength, her fierce protectiveness, and the glimpses of vulnerability she occasionally allowed him to see. By midday, they had made good progress despite the challenging conditions. During a brief rest, Kira moved closer to Thomas as they shared a meal of emergency rations. In my tribe, she said casually, a warrior who saves a vessel in waiting is granted a special status. Oh, Thomas raised an eyebrow, curious. They become honored guardian, permitted to request any boon within the chief's power to grant. A smile played at the corners of her mouth. What would you ask for, Thomas Morgan? The question hung between them, laden with meaning beyond the words themselves. Thomas found himself studying the curve of her lips, the intensity in her eyes, the subtle blue flush that had risen to her cheeks. I'd have to give that some serious thought, he replied, his voice lower than he'd intended. Kira leaned slightly closer. Perhaps I could help you decide. The air between them seemed to crackle with possibility, a connection that transcended their different worlds, different biologies, different paths. For the first time in years, Thomas felt truly alive, awakened to possibilities he'd long since abandoned. But the moment was shattered by a distant, all too familiar sound, the whine of Rekian engines. The hunt was on. We need to split up, Thomas said, his voice low and urgent as the Rekian engines grew louder. I'll lead them away. You get Mila to safety. Kira's eyes flashed with immediate resistance. No. We fight together. This isn't about fighting, Thomas countered, already checking his weapons. It's about protecting Mila. If they capture her, everything's lost. Their gazes locked in silent battle, neither willing to yield. Finally, Kira gave a curt nod. 2 hours, she said. Then we rendezvous at the Frost Labyrinth's western entrance. Thomas raised an eyebrow. What now? A maze of ice formations, or dangerous, but the Vrekians won't follow us there? Her hand gripped his forearm, the pressure firm. 2 hours, Thomas. If you're not there, I'll be there, he promised, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Kira's eyes softened momentarily. Without warning, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture he somehow understood carried deep significance. Until then, warrior, she whispered. Before he could respond, she was gone, guiding Mila swiftly away through a narrow ravine. Thomas watched them disappear, then turned toward the approaching sound of engines. Time to make some noise. He moved with practiced stealth to higher ground, selecting a position that offered both visibility and multiple escape routes. The first Rekian scout vessel appeared minutes later, a sleek, predatory craft designed for atmospheric pursuit. Thomas waited until it passed directly overhead before taking his shot. The energy bolt from his rifle struck precisely where he'd aimed, not to destroy the craft, but to disable its sensor array. The vessel lurched, its engine sputtering as secondary systems attempted to compensate. Thomas was already moving, leaving behind one of his modified decoys programmed to emit human life signs. As expected, 2 more Rekian vessels converged on his previous position, while the damaged scout attempted to regain control. For the next hour, Thomas led the Rekians on a tactical chase across the frozen terrain, striking, moving, leaving false trails. It was a dangerous game, but one he'd played before on countless worlds. The difference this time was what waited at the inn. Not extraction by his team, but a rendezvous with a blue-skinned warrior who had somehow breached defenses he'd maintained for years. As he navigated the treacherous landscape, Thomas found his thoughts repeatedly returning to Kira. Her fierce protectiveness, her unwavering loyalty to her people, her surprising moments of vulnerability. She was unlike any being he'd encountered in his extensive travels. Alien, yes, but somehow more real, more present than anyone he'd known in years. The realization struck him with unexpected force. He wasn't just attracted to her, he cared for her. The thought was still processing when he spotted the western entrance to what must be the Frost Labyrinth, a towering archway of ice leading into a maze-like formation of frozen spires and crevasses. No sign of Kira or Mila yet, but he was early. Thomas took cover and scanned the area, confirming he'd successfully diverted his pursuers. For now, at least. 20 minutes later, movement caught his eye. Kira emerged from behind a crystalline formation. Mila close behind her. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by alarm. Kira was limping, one hand pressed against her side. He rushed to meet them. What happened? Requiem patrol, Kira grimaced. Different from the ones following you. We had no choice but to engage. You're hurt. It's nothing. Like hell it is. Thomas guided them into the relative shelter of the labyrinth's entrance. Let me see. Reluctantly, Kira allowed him to examine her injury, an energy weapon graze across her ribs. Not life-threatening, but painful and potentially debilitating if left untreated. Mila, he asked, already reaching for his medical kit. Unharmed, Kira assured him. She fought well. The young Galatian stood nearby, clutching what appeared to be a Vrikian sidearm. Her expression was grim but determined, a far cry from the frightened girl he'd rescued days earlier. As Thomas treated Kira's wound, applying regenerative gel and a pressure bandage, she watched him with an unreadable expression. You came? She said finally. I said I would. Many make promises. Few keep them when plasma bolts are flying. Thomas met her gaze. I'm not many. Something shifted in her eyes. A softening, a recognition. Her hand rose to touch his face, fingers tracing the line of his jaw with surprising gentleness. No, she agreed quietly. You are not. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Mila spoke, breaking the spell. She pointed deeper into the labyrinth, her words urgent. She says we must reach the center before nightfall, Kira translated, reluctantly pulling away from Thomas. The temperature drops to lethal levels after dark, except at the heart of the maze where thermal vents provide warmth. Thomas nodded, helping Kira to her feet. Then we'd better move. Can you walk? I can fight, she responded with a hint of her usual fierceness. Wasn't what I asked, but I'll take it. The Frost Labyrinth proved aptly named, a disorienting maze of ice walls that rose 30 feet high in places, reflecting light in ways that played tricks on the eyes. Mila led the way, seemingly navigating by markers invisible to Thomas. Your people use this place often? He asked Kira, who moved beside him, her limp gradually improving as the regenerative gel did its work. As a trial for young warriors, she explained, and as a sanctuary in times of danger. The ice formations disrupt tracking technology, and few outsiders can navigate its paths. Smart, Thomas commented, using the environment as a defense. We have survived on this world for thousands of years, Kira said with quiet pride, not through superior weapons, but through understanding our home. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, Thomas noticed the temperature beginning to rise slightly. Soon they emerged into a circular clearing at the maze's center. Steam rose from small fissures in the ground, creating an almost tropical microclimate amid the frozen wasteland. The heart of the labyrinth, Kira announced. We will be safe here until morning. While Mila set about gathering what appeared to be edible fungi growing near the thermal vents, Thomas and Kira established a small camp. Working together, they fell into an easy rhythm that belied their short acquaintance. As night fell outside the labyrinth, bringing deadly cold to the surrounding ice, the center remained comfortably warm. After a simple meal, Mila retreated to a small alcove, leaving Thomas and Kira sitting side by side near one of the thermal vents. I captured this from one of the Rekians, Kira said, producing a small device from her pack. It appears to be a communication unit, but I cannot decipher it. Thomas examined the alien technology. It's encrypted, but I might be able to access some basic data. He worked in silence for several minutes, using tools from his kit to bypass security protocols. Got something, looks like deployment orders. They've established a forward base about 20 kilometers from your tribe's location. Kira's expression darkened. How many? At least 30 troops, heavy weapons? Thomas looked up from the device. This isn't just a hunting party, Kira. This is an invasion force. My people are strong, but against such weapons, her voice trailed off, concern etching lines around her eyes. Without thinking, Thomas reached out, covering her hand with his. We'll figure something out. Together. Kira looked at their joined hands, then up to his face. The firelight played across her features, highlighting the alien yet beautiful contours of her face. Something vulnerable and questioning entered her expression. Why do you help us, Thomas Morgan? This is not your fight. Maybe I was tired of not fighting for anything that mattered, he replied honestly. Her free hand rose to his face again, this time with deliberate intent. Among my people, warriors who face death together often seek comfort in each other's arms. It is believed that such union strengthens both spirits for the battles to come. Thomas's pulse quickened at her directness. Is that what you're suggesting? I am suggesting, Kira said, moving closer until he could feel her breath against his lips, that I have never met anyone like you, human or Glacian, and that tomorrow we may die facing the Rekians. Her meaning was unmistakable, her eyes reflecting desire that transcended species and worlds. Thomas found himself responding to her closeness, to the unexpected connection that had formed between them in mere days, yet felt deeper than relationships he'd spent years building. What about Mila? He asked, glancing toward the alcove. She knows our ways, Kira replied simply. She will give us privacy. As if on cue, Mila rose and moved to the far side of the clearing, disappearing behind a curtain of steam with a knowing glance back at them. Alone now, surrounded by the ethereal beauty of the ice maze and the primal warmth of the thermal vents, Thomas and Kira faced each other, no longer just human and Glacian, man and woman, but two beings who had found something unexpected and precious amid danger and duty. When their lips finally met, it was like discovering a new world, alien yet somehow familiar, strange yet perfect. Their differences seemed to enhance rather than hinder the connection forming between them, creating something unique and powerful that neither had experienced before. That night, in the heart of the Frost Labyrinth, they found in each other what both had been missing, not just physical comfort, but a recognition of kindred spirits across the stars. Thomas woke before dawn, Kira's warmth pressed against him in the heart of the Frost Labyrinth. For a moment, he allowed himself to savor the sensation, the unfamiliar yet perfect feel of her blue skin against his, the rhythmic sound of her breathing, the surprising softness of her white hair splayed across his chest. Last night had changed something fundamental between them. What began as physical attraction had deepened into a connection that transcended their different species and worlds. In her arms, Thomas had found something he'd thought forever lost, a sense of belonging, of purpose beyond mere survival. Kira stirred, her luminous eyes opening to meet his. You're thinking too loudly, she murmured, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Old habit, he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Planning. For the battle to come? She propped herself up on one elbow, suddenly all warrior again despite their intimate position. What strategy do you propose? Thomas couldn't help but smile at her directness. No morning after awkwardness, no questioning of what had happened between them. Just forward momentum, practical and focused. It was one of the many things he was coming to admire about her. The Vrekians have numbers and technology, he said, shifting into tactical mode himself, but we have knowledge of the terrain and the element of surprise. Guerrilla warfare, Kira nodded, familiar with the concept if not the Earth term. My people have used such methods against technologically superior enemies before. They dressed and roused Mila, who greeted them with knowing eyes but made no comment about their night together. As they shared a breakfast of preserved rations, Thomas outlined his plan using diagrams drawn in the condensation on an ice wall. We can't take on their main force directly, he explained, but we can disrupt their operations, disable their equipment, and generally make their lives miserable until they decide this mission isn't worth the cost. My tribe's warriors will join the fight, Kira added. But first we must reach them with warning. And that's the tricky part, Thomas agreed. The Vrakians have established positions between us and your people. We'll need to... He stopped abruptly, head tilted toward the labyrinth's entrance. A faint but distinctive sound had reached his ears, the low-frequency hum of Vrakian scanner technology. They've found us, he said quietly. Or at least, they found the labyrinth. Kira was on her feet instantly, weapon in hand. How? The ice formations should disrupt their scanners. They must have deployed specialized trackers, Thomas replied, gathering his equipment with practiced efficiency. Probably using thermal imaging to detect the heat signatures from the vents. Mila spoke rapidly to Kira, gesturing toward the back of the clearing. She says there's another way out, Kira translated. A narrow passage that leads to the eastern edge of the labyrinth. It's dangerous. Parts may have collapsed since she last traversed it during her initiation rites. Better than waiting here to be cornered, Thomas decided. Lead the way. The passage proved even more treacherous than described. A claustrophobic tunnel through solid ice, barely wide enough for Thomas's broad shoulders. In places, they were forced to crawl on hands and knees, the frozen surface burning against exposed skin. Your tribe certainly doesn't make initiation easy, Thomas muttered as they squeezed through a particularly tight section. The path of a warrior is never easy, Kira replied from ahead, a hint of pride in her voice. But those who complete it are forever changed. I'm feeling pretty changed right about now, Thomas quipped, earning a rare laugh from Kira that echoed beautifully through the ice tunnel. After what felt like hours, they emerged onto a narrow ledge overlooking a steep ravine, the eastern edge of the frost labyrinth. Just as Mila had promised, from their elevated position, they could see movement at the labyrinth's main entrance. 6 Rekian soldiers in specialized cold-weather armor, deploying what appeared to be seismic charges. They're going to collapse the entrance, Thomas realized, trap anything inside. Efficient, Kira commented grimly, and ruthless. Thomas studied the terrain ahead. The ravine below offered the most direct route toward the Galatian settlement, but also left them exposed. The ridgeline provided better cover, but would slow their progress significantly. Before he could suggest a path, Mila gasped softly. Following her gaze, Thomas spotted what had alarmed her. A Rekian scout ship patrolling the ridgeline, its sensors sweeping methodically across the landscape. We're running out of options, he murmured. Kira's hand found his, squeezing briefly. Then we make new ones. The simple confidence in her voice steadied him. Last night hadn't just been about physical connection. It had forged something stronger between them, a partnership based on mutual respect and trust. The scout ship, Thomas said, a plan forming. If we could capture it, Kira's eyes lit with understanding. We could fly directly to my tribe. And bypass the Rekian blockade entirely, Thomas finished. But first we need to lure it within range. They formulated a plan quickly. Using components from Thomas's equipment and the captured Vrakian communicator, they created a false distress signal mimicking a Vrakian emergency beacon. Mila, proving herself far more than just a ceremonial figure, helped calibrate the signal to the correct frequency. Ready? Thomas asked, finger poised over the activation switch. Kira nodded, her expression fierce and determined. In that moment, with the morning sun illuminating her blue skin and white hair against the backdrop of ice and sky, she was the most beautiful thing Thomas had ever seen. Whatever happens, he said quietly, last night was worth it. A smile touched her lips. Among my people, such unions are not taken lightly, Thomas Morgan. When a warrior chooses to share her spirit with another, it is not easily undone. The implications of her words sent a surge of emotion through him. Hope, fear, possibility. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his in that same meaningful gesture from before. Now, she whispered, let us show these Rekins what happens when they threaten what is ours. Thomas activated the signal. Almost immediately, the scout ship altered course, descending toward their position. They took cover behind an ice formation, weapons ready. The ship landed 50 meters away, its engines powering down as 2 Rekian soldiers emerged to investigate the beacon. Thomas and Kira moved with synchronized precision, years of combat experience guiding their actions without need for verbal communication. The Rekians never knew what hit them. Thomas's energy bolt took out the first one, while Kira's spear found its mark in the second. Before the ship's automated systems could register the attack, they were inside the cockpit, Thomas's technical knowledge allowing him to override the security protocols. "Impressive," Kira commented as he brought the ship's systems online. "You've done this before." "Once or twice," Thomas admitted with a grin, though usually with better equipment. As the ship rose into the air with Mila safely secured in the rear compartment, Thomas felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: the pure exhilaration of fighting for something that mattered, alongside someone who mattered. The Frekian commander, observing from his forward base, received the report of the stolen scout ship with cold fury. "Deploy all units," he ordered. "I want the vessel in waiting and her protectors eliminated before they reach the tribal lands." As the scout ship sped toward the Galatian settlement, Thomas and Kira were unaware of the full force being mobilized against them. But they did know one thing with absolute certainty: whatever came next, they would face it together. The Galatian settlement appeared on the horizon, a sprawling collection of structures built into the side of a massive ice cliff, their organic shapes blending harmoniously with the natural formations. At the center stood a towering spire that gleamed with an inner blue light. "The Temple of Winter," Kira explained, pointing to the spire, "home of the heart." As they approached in the stolen scout ship, Thomas worked furiously at the control panel, bypassing security protocols to access the Rekian tactical network. "Got it," he announced, scanning the encrypted data. "Full invasion plans, 3 attack waves, ground forces, air support, and..." He paused, his expression darkening. "An extraction team specifically targeting the temple. They're bringing mining equipment designed to cut through the sacred chamber." Kira's jaw tightened. "When?" "Tomorrow at dawn. They're gathering their forces now." The scout ship landed in the settlement's central plaza to a reception of armed Galatian warriors, their spears and bows trained on the Rekian vessel. Kira stepped out first, calling out in their native language. The tension visibly eased, though suspicious glances remained fixed on Thomas as he emerged with Mila. A tall, regal Galatian male approached, Chief Norin, Mila's father. His elaborate ceremonial armor and the intricate markings covering his exposed skin spoke of his high status. He embraced his daughter briefly before turning his penetrating gaze on Thomas. "So," he said in accented but clear English, "you are the human who saved my daughter and captured a Rekian vessel?" His eyes narrowed. Impressive for a solitary outsider. "He is more than that, Father," Kira interjected, stepping forward. "He is Thomas Morgan, former warrior of Earth, and he has crucial information about the Rekian invasion force." The chief studied Thomas for a long moment before nodding. "Come, the council must hear this." Inside the temple, Thomas laid out everything he had discovered: the size of the Rekian force, their weapons capabilities, and their plan to extract the heart of winter. The Galatian Council, composed of tribal elders and senior warriors, listened with growing concern. "Their numbers are too great," one elder argued. "We should evacuate, take the heart to the ancient sanctuaries." "There's no time," Thomas countered. "Their sensors would detect the energy signature of the heart if you moved it. Your best chance, your only chance, is to make this position so costly to take that they abandon the attempt." "And how do you propose we do this, human?" Another council member challenged. "Our weapons cannot match theirs." Thomas smiled grimly. "You don't need to match them. You just need to outsmart them." Over the next hours, Thomas worked with Kira and the Galatian warriors to prepare their defense. Using his military experience and the tactical data from the Rekian network, he identified vulnerabilities in their attack plan and devised countermeasures using the Galatians' intimate knowledge of their environment. Ice trenches were dug at strategic points. Hunting parties set traps along likely approach routes. The settlement's natural thermal vents were modified to create blinding steam barriers that would disrupt Rekian sensors. As darkness fell, Thomas found himself standing with Kira on a high parapet overlooking the preparations. Below, Galatian warriors moved with purpose, their determination palpable despite the overwhelming odds. "Your people are impressive," Thomas said. "Most would have fled." "This is our home," Kira replied simply. The heart of winter has sustained us for generations. We will not abandon it. Thomas turned to her, taking in her fierce beauty in the fading light. After tomorrow, if we survive this... When we survive this, she corrected with a confident smile. When we survive, he amended, I should probably head back to my outpost. Kira's expression fell slightly. Is that what you want? It's what makes sense, Thomas said carefully. I'm not Galatian. This isn't my world. It could be, she said softly. Last night in the labyrinth, when we joined, did you not feel it? Feel what? The connection. Among my people, when true spirits find each other, something changes. Her hand rose to rest over his heart. Something permanent. Thomas covered her hand with his own. The warmth of her blue skin now familiar and essential. I felt it, he admitted. I just didn't know what it meant. It means, Kira said, her eyes holding his, that you are no longer alone, Thomas Morgan. Nor am I. The simple truth of her words struck him deeply. For years, he had chosen isolation, believing it was all he deserved after the battles and losses of his past. But in this alien woman, he had found something unexpected. Acceptance, understanding, and the possibility of a future he had long since abandoned. Before he could respond, alarms sounded throughout the settlement. A young warrior rushed to them, speaking rapidly to Kira. The Vrekians have moved up their timetable, she translated grimly. They attack now, under cover of darkness. Thomas's tactical mind engaged immediately. They must have detected our preparations. We need to... Chief Norin requests your presence in the temple chamber, the young warrior interrupted, addressing both of them. Immediately. In the heart of the temple, beneath layers of ancient ice, lay the sacred chamber. Thomas gasped involuntarily as they entered. The space was dominated by a pulsing crystalline formation that emanated blue-white light, bathing everything in its ethereal glow. The heart of winter? Chief Norin stood before it with Mila at his side. The Vrekians come earlier than expected, he said without preamble. Our defenses are not yet complete. We'll make do with what we have, Thomas assured him. Your warriors know the plan. There is another option, the chief said, his gaze shifting to the heart. One that has not been attempted in generations. Mila spoke, her voice stronger and more confident than Thomas had yet heard. Kira listened, her eyes widening. She says the heart can be awakened, Kira translated, its full power unleashed to protect the tribe. At what cost? Thomas asked, sensing there was more. It requires a catalyst, Chief Norin explained, a joining of energies, the vessel in waiting, and he hesitated, looking between Thomas and Kira, a bonded pair whose connection transcends their separate natures. Understanding dawned on Thomas. Us, he said simply. You mean us? Kira turned to him, her expression a mixture of hope and concern. The ritual would formalize our bond in the eyes of my people. It would make you part of the tribe, part of me, forever. And it would give us the power to defeat the Vrekians? Thomas clarified. If the legends are true, Chief Norin nodded, but the choice must be freely made. Both choices, to fight alongside us and to bind yourself to Kira. Outside, the sounds of battle had begun, the first Vrekian scouts engaging the outer defenses. Time was running short. Thomas looked at Kira, this fierce, beautiful warrior who had somehow breached the walls around his heart in mere days. He thought of his solitary existence before meeting her, and the vibrant possibility of a life at her side. I've spent years running from connections, he said quietly, believing I was better off alone. Then you showed up at my door, ready to skewer me for helping your charge. A smile tugged at Kira's lips. You were very suspicious. And you were magnificent, Thomas replied honestly. You still are. He turned to Chief Norin. I choose to fight for your people. And I choose Kira, today, tomorrow, for however many days I have left. The ritual was brief but profound. Thomas and Kira stood before the heart of winter. Their hands joined as Mila recited ancient words. The crystalline formation pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats, its light intensifying until it enveloped them completely. Thomas felt a warmth spreading through him, a connection to Kira that transcended the physical, as if their very essences were intertwining. Or through this bond, he sensed her thoughts, her emotions, her unwavering strength. When the light receded, something had fundamentally changed. The heart of winter glowed with renewed vigor, its energy extending outward through the temple and beyond. Outside, the Rikian forces had breached the outer perimeter when the phenomenon began. A wave of cold energy swept across the battlefield, freezing their weapons, disabling their technology. Rikian soldiers found themselves immobilized, their advanced armor systems failing in the face of this ancient power. At the center of the Rikian formation, Commander Rex watched in disbelief as his invasion force crumbled. "Impossible!" he hissed, activating his personal shield as he pushed toward the temple. "The heart will be mine!" In the sacred chamber, Thomas and Kira felt the commander's approach through their connection to the heart. "He comes," Kira said, reaching for her weapon. "Let him," Thomas replied with newfound confidence. "We'll face him together." When Commander Rex burst into the chamber, he found not frightened primitives but a united front. Galatian warriors led by Chief Norin, Mila standing tall as vessel in waiting, and at the forefront, Thomas and Kira, their bodies suffused with the blue glow of the heart. "Your forces are defeated, Commander," Thomas stated calmly. "Your technology is useless here. Leave this world and never return." "I do not accept defeat from lesser beings," Rex snarled, drawing an energy weapon that sputtered but still functioned within his shield. What followed was not the battle Rex expected. Every shot he fired was anticipated and deflected by the combined awareness of Thomas and Kira. Moving as one, they closed the distance, their coordinated attacks systematically dismantling his defenses until he stood defenseless before them. "Kill me then," Rex spat. "Prove you are no better than us." "That's where you're wrong," Thomas said, lowering his weapon. "We are better than you. We fight to protect, not to conquer." Chief Norin stepped forward. You will return to your people with a message. The Galatians and their allies are not to be trifled with. The heart of winter is and will remain under our protection." Defeated and humiliated, Rex was escorted to his command ship, the only Rikian vessel still operational, and sent off-world with his surviving forces. In the days that followed, the Galatian settlement returned to normal. The damage from the brief battle was repaired, and preparations began for Mila's formal installation as Guardian of the Heart. Thomas and Kira stood once again on the high parapet, watching the twin moons rise over the ice fields. Their bond, forged in battle and sanctified by ancient power, had settled into something comfortable yet exhilarating. "So," Kira said, leaning against him, "what will the lonely old human man do now that he's neither lonely nor, by Galatian standards, particularly old?" Thomas laughed, pulling her closer. "I was thinking of building a slightly larger shelter. One with room for a fierce warrior woman who has an annoying habit of being right about most things." "Huh. Only most?" Kira raised an eyebrow, her eyes sparkling with challenge. "Well, you were wrong about humans being weak," Thomas pointed out with a grin. "Perhaps," she conceded, turning in his arms to face him. "But I was right about the most important thing." "And what's that?" "That you belonged here," she said simply. "With me." As their lips met beneath the alien sky, Thomas Morgan, former soldier, reluctant hero, and now honored member of the Galatian tribe, finally understood what he had been searching for all those years in isolation. Not escape from his past, but a future worth fighting for. He had found it in the most unexpected place, in the heart of a frozen world, and in the arms of a blue-skinned warrior who had taught him that no man, human or otherwise, was meant to face the universe alone.